Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to Harrison's Garage. I'm Harrison, and today we are going to be taking a deeper dive into an endeavor I've undertaken on my truck, and that is to convert the interior into a sort of unique, bespoke, night edition Longhorn. Right now, factory, you can get the Longhorn trim, you can get the OEM night edition. You can't really combine elements. If you want the Longhorn truck, you got to get the chrome exterior bits. Nothing's paint matched. If you get the night edition truck, everything on the outside is all blacked out, which is mint, but everything on the inside is all blacked out as well. And I want a little bit of color in there. So if you haven't already seen it, I've worked with Catskin. I'll link the video below. I've worked with Catskin to design a custom set of seats with elements of black, elements of brown. And today's video is going to be a continuation on that. We're going to be adding additional elements of that same brown that I have on my seats to other parts of the truck. My goal is to do the grab handles. I'd like to wrap those in genuine leather. I believe we've got a full grain leather from Catskin, which I picked up through my local installer. I was able to order a quarter hide through them. This is just full grain seat leather, and it's going to be great for wrapping the handles. We're going to hopefully also get to another video on doing the door card inlays as well. I think from there I may or may not do a couple other pieces, but today's video, like I said, we're going to be focusing just on improving the grab handles. On the factory OEM trucks, if you have anything other than a limited trim, you're just going to get a plain old grab handle, nothing special to it. The limited trim trucks will come with a leather wrap on the grab handles. Those are actually vinyl with a sort of a stamped pattern on top to make it look like leather. We're going to be removing those from my truck. In fact, I've actually already done that as I'm filming this intro here. These are the vinyl wraps for the grab handles up front. In the rear, they don't come with anything. We're going to be putting wraps on all four grab handles all the way around, so in the front and in the back. And I'm going to show you how to take your grab handles from the factory OEM look like this and transform them into something more like that. So with that in mind, I'll bring you over here and we'll get started. Okay, before we get started in the actual work of everything, I thought I'd show you what we're going to be working with. Again, this is the leather I picked up from the local dealer. This is straight from Catskin, same color as the rest of my seats. This is a mahogany brown from Catskin. You'll see on the back side we got this suede finish, and on the front we've got the full grain leather feel here. It's very supple, very soft, good to work with. So that takes care of the leather. Now, other tools you'll want to use or make sure you have before you get started on a project like this. First of all, this is a leather awl. This is going to be great for going through when you're stitching things up and just sort of opening up your holes that you've already poked. This is an incredibly sharp specialty tool. If you have one, it makes your life way easier. Leather is surprisingly tough to work with. If you haven't sewn with it before, you'll be surprised. The next thing you're going to want to get a set of is a pair of sort of leather stitching irons. These I got on Amazon for like 30 bucks. This number 5 here, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, here you go. That number 5 denotes how far apart these points are. These are 5 millimeters apart here, and these are similar irons. These are 8 millimeters apart. Now, the reason why I chose 5 and 8 is to be as in keeping with the factory leather wrapping that came with the truck up front. I mentioned I already took the sort of vinyl wrap off. This was the top of the wrap. This was the bottom. It would, wrap around like so. And then they had this X stitching pattern, a cross stitching pattern, and it went into these holes here. Now, these holes where the crisscross stitching pattern is, these are 8 millimeters apart. I just measured with a set of calipers, and you'll see that these holes here line up quite nicely with this stitching iron I picked up from Amazon. So I just wanted to keep that the same. If you want to do something different, feel free. Again, these holes on the top where the seam is, these are 5 millimeters apart. So that's what I went with here. So I told you I already took these off. Full disclosure, I've already gone through and kind of done a little bit of, learning on the go. This is the first time I've ever worked on a vehicle's interior with leather, so I decided to practice with the front, the front grab handles. And now that I've got those perfected and worked through, installed, I'm going to take you guys through the same process on doing the rears. This was my first go around. What I had done was assumed I could use this grab handle piece as a, wrap as a template. What I did was I laid it down on the leather. Get these out of here. I laid it down on the leather like so, traced it, cut it. I gave myself a little bit of extra on either end so I could fold over for this seam, which turned out fine. I did not account for the thickness of the leather once it's been folded over. It's quite a bit thicker than your average sort of vinyl wrap, as well as the fact that vinyl is incredibly stretchy in this direction. Leather, not so much. So in order to account for this thickness, the leather piece actually has to, I guess I should say the width of the leather piece is fine if it's the same width at the middle here of this initial wrap, of the factory wrap, but the leather piece needs to be wider here at this top end and this bottom end on either side. Now, specifically, the leather needs to be, and again, I found this out through trial and error, 1/8 of an inch wider over here and 1/8 of an inch wider over here. So on either side of this end and then either side of this end, it needs to be 1/8 of an inch wider, and at the middle it can be the exact same width as the factory wrap. Now if you don't have a factory wrap already, say you're doing this, you have a Laramie, Bighorn, Tradesman, etc., then you're going to have to do what I'm about to do for the back seats, and that is come up with a way to take measurements. I already did check this, and the back seat grab handles are a completely different size than the front seats, so these are not going to be helpful in any way for approximating a template shape for the back seats. Now, before we jump into working with the back seats completely, I wanted to go over, in addition to the leather and the leather working irons, I have just a regular old fabric marker, which is left over from my project on changing the stitching color in the truck. This worked incredibly well in terms of marking out the leather. It has a really fat tip on this end, which I didn't use for this job, and an incredibly detailed tip here, which worked out perfect for marking up the leather on the suede side here. Now, as far as the thread goes that you're going to use when you work with leather, we're going to be doing at least on this top and bottom end, this is a saddle stitch. You're going to want some way to clamp this to a bench top and work through it. I just used a clamp like this and a piece of sheet steel that I had lying around to clamp this up to the side of my workbench like so I could stitch it. Anyway, whatever you can work up, jig up, will be fine. You don't need a fancy leather working vise or anything like that. If you have one, wonderful, but you don't need it. Now this is the thread you're going to need. Specifically, I got this when I popped over to Michael's. It's a polyester thread. It's braided and it's waxed. Those are the things you're going to need to look for. I actually got this at Michael's and decided I didn't like it because it was too thin. I needed a thicker thread. I believe this is 0.8 millimeters thick, whereas this stuff is 0.38 millimeters, or almost 0.4 millimeters. This will be great if you wanted to do some very small detail embroidery on the door cars, which I may do. This stuff is great for doing these stitches here, as well as the sort of the X pattern stitches when you connect it to the door handle. So now that we have that, two properties about this thread that I really like. It's braided, so it's very strong. It's polyester, so it's going to be stronger than a cotton thread. You need that strength when you're cinching down these wraps to the grab handles. You want it to be tight. You don't want it to slide and rotate. You do have the option of using something like this, which is an adhesive, heavy-duty adhesive spray for things like fabric and trim. I didn't need this for the front seats. My fit was precise enough where it wasn't necessary. The last thing you're going to need is something like this, fabric tack glue. We'll get to that in a moment. First, I wanted to finish off the thread. In addition to being braided, it's waxed, so it allows you to pull it through the leather holes that you poke much more easily than something that isn't waxed. And lastly, being polyester, when you go to tie this off, you tie it in a knot, you can just hit it with a little heat, and that will melt the knot and assure that you won't ever have this unravel. Now, I mentioned this Fabri-Tac glue. This is very strong stuff. These stitches here are basically purely cosmetic in that I put glue on the top and bottom here. As I folded it over and pressed it down, you hold it for a couple of seconds, it'll hold itself in place. After 5 minutes of setting up, it's such a strong bond that you physically can't undo it. Here's the glue, and I physically can't pull that back any farther. This, obviously the stitching now is incredibly strong, but it wasn't necessary to keep this physically folded over, but it looks great and it allows you to work the stitches in much more easily, having this bonded in place and making sure it won't move while you're stitching it. So definitely recommend something like this. This is Fabri-Tac. I got this at Michael's. I'll probably try and put a link to this down below if I can find it online. Now, with all that said, let's get into the very first step in making the wrapping for the back seats, and that will be figuring out how to take a measurement. So I haven't done this yet. My thinking is to take something like masking tape and just wrap around the handle and then slowly peel it back. I'm going to go ahead and do that and then come back with you, bring my masking tape template over here, and we'll get started on cutting out the actual wrap for the truck. Okay, so here is the final template that I came up with for the back seat grab handle. Essentially just took some tape, literally stuck it to the handle, and then I took a really sharp razor blade and gently sliced down the middle, peeled it back, and then came back inside, and then on the sticky side of the template I laid down some more masking tape, so it's now smooth on both sides. Went back out, reformed it just to check fit, and found out that when I did relay some tape down, it kind of prevented this from flaring out. So I do need to make a mental note that these ends need to again be about 1/8 of an inch larger to account for the width of the leather as it folds over. And then here I'm not so concerned about this being the exact width. I'm going to make the template a smidge larger. I can always cut the leather down if it's too big when I go out to test fit after I glue the folds. So what we're going to do is lay this down here on our test sample here. Now, I think we're probably going to leave about a 3/4 inch or so of leather on either side here when we're going to draw up how much we're going to have for the fold over. So something like this. And again, you can always have extra and cut it down. You can't create more when you need it. So I think I'm just going to make my line here. And again, this is that fabric marker. It does a really great job of marking this up. So here's essentially where we've got our leather marked out. Now I don't need that much, but I do want to cut out here before we even get started on tracing this guy. Just make sure I start with a nice straight line. So I'm going to mark this off and cut that straight before I continue tracing our pattern. Okay, I've got that bottom edge cut off nice and straight. I found the best, I don't think I talked about it, I found the best way to cut the leather is just with a really nice pair of sharp scissors. I did try using an X-Acto blade that's very, very sharp, but I found that it tended to stretch the leather a little bit no matter how much I tried to pull it taut. This, cutting it from both sides of the grain, seemed to do better. So we're going to go ahead now, lay down our template. And again, I mentioned I want it to be a little bit taller on either end. So it doesn't have to be sciencey here. We don't need to actually get out calipers and measure. But I want to have, again, at the end of my fold over here, because it's going to fold down to, this is going to fold over to something like right around here. But I do want to have say from the middle of the template here, a good 1/8 of an inch more. So I'm going to go from the middle of the template using this piece of metal as a straight edge, and then lining it up real careful here. And see, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can see it. So we're going to run a line from the center all the way out to this corner. Now, I don't actually need it to come out that far, but again, I can always trim it smaller. So we're going to do that on both sides here. Okay, so the important thing to see is that the middle of the template is touching the lines here, but that the outer edge of the template where the top and bottom of the green is, we have a good amount of extra to account for that sort of curvature outwards or on the top and bottom of the handle to ergonomically fit the hand. So we're going to go ahead and cut this out, fold over the edges to match this height, and then go double check the fitment in the truck on the grab handle, and then get started on actually punching holes. Okay guys, I have used the template to cut out not one but two different pieces of leather here, one for the left side and one for the passenger side, I should say, driver side and passenger side. I've marked the fold locations, as you can see in fabric pen here, and then it shows up very well on camera. I've actually folded this already, creased it, just kind of like you would a piece of paper, and you can see where that suede is folded over. When I did a quick test fit in the truck, I'm definitely going to be a little big here. I'm going to need to trim down. It looks like this side, the right side on both of these, just the way I kind of traced this out. This one was traced from this one. And I'm probably going to be about the correct size on the ends. But we'll go ahead and find out, I guess, for fit and trimming wise, we'll find that out after we glue the ends shut and hold those in place and then do another test fit. So again, I've got this permanent fabric adhesive. It bonds, show you here, fabrics, lace, glass, leather, wood, and trims. It's a pretty quick hold, takes a couple minutes. So go ahead and put this down. I'm going to do a bead right up near the top of the fold here, kind of get above and below the stitch lines is the goal. And when you go to put this on, I find it's a little bit easier if you just nip the corners here as well. Something like that. So I'm going to do that for all four. So we'll put this guy aside, leave it alone to tack up there. Trim this one down as well. And I'll meet back up with you once we're ready to actually start putting holes in this. Okay, so I've come back from doing a final test fit before we sew this up. Now, I found that this one happened to fit the driver's side just as well as this one happened to fit the passenger side. Not really any difference between size, but I did find that for some reason, the way I just happened to cut out the template, this side fit up better, and this was the downside. If I flipped it upside down, it was a little bit tighter on the end, so this is where we're gonna do it. I'm going to do the punches for the seams across the top for the saddle stitch here, because we're going to have to sew this fold over together to get our nice seam. I'm going to be using a 5mm leather punch here, and we're going to be putting these holes about OEM distance from the top on their seam, maybe just a smidge lower. But that's really just due to the thickness of the material on this thickness of the round over versus what factory vinyl has. So I'm going to try and line this up without getting too far in front of the camera here with my face, and something about like that. Again, we're going 5 millimeters across the top and then 8 millimeters down the sides. So once you're confident with your alignment here, you're going to go ahead and take your hammer and punch your holes. Now, normally you have a special hammer for this, but this one works just as well. So I'm going to use this and we'll go ahead and get these holes knocked in. And you'll see I've got holes there. It doesn't come through all the way on the side. These holes are marking holes where you then follow through with an awl. This striking iron is a little different. These holes are actually hollow, and they're meant to take out the piece of leather and absorb it, and then it'll fall through and come through in these holes and be knocked out. But these holes here are not hollow. These are just marking holes. So once you get your holes marked, you're going to follow through with a striking iron. But the way you do this is you've got now 5 holes. It's perfectly spaced 5 millimeters apart. You're going to throw the first prong into the last hole, and that'll guarantee you the remaining holes that you put in here are going to continue to be perfectly spaced. You just have to align them correctly with the top, and that you can do by eye. So mark these in place. Just keep going. So I'll do one more of these, and then I'll meet back up with you once I've got all the holes marked out. Okay, I've gotten the holes marked on the top and the bottom, and realized there's one other thing I wanted to tell you before I just went ahead and did the holes on the side. I'm gonna go ahead and flip it over. Do your holes on one side. Start, however you want, where you want, that type of thing. Get them all done, but when you finish that side, it's really, really important that when you go to do your holes on the final side, here, you fold up the handle wrap and then align the holes that you did on the first side with the holes that you're going to put in on the second side. I'll say that again. You've already put in holes on the side. So say you've already put in holes on the side that my thumbs are touching. You want to make sure that the holes that you put in on the side that my forefingers are touching here, my index fingers touching here, align across here perfectly. So just make sure that you start, this first hole here. If you're starting it here, this one starts here. If you're starting it way over here, this one starts way over here. If they don't align, then when you go to sew this up, it's going to be sewed up and it's going to be cockeyed. It's going to be something like that. I mean, that's an extreme example, but you don't want it to look like that. You want it to be nice and even. So make sure those holes align. So I'm going to go ahead, do these off camera, and meet back up with you once we're ready to start stitching. Okay, we are now ready to stitch the top seam here. I'm going to be using the saddle stitch, and I'm going to sort of start in this. I don't know if you can see that here. This is the first hole. A lot of people start in the second one. I'm going to use this as a quote-unquote second hole wrap around. It's kind of confusing. Watch the video back a few times. You'll pick up on what I'm doing. I'm not going into the details of a saddle stitch in this video. I am by no means qualified to teach it. I simply watched a couple of videos myself on how to do it and picked it up pretty quickly. If you are looking for that kind of detail, there are a ton of videos on how to do this online, so just go ahead and take a look at one of those. What I'm going to do though is get started on this row of stitching. I'm going to go ahead and throw that needle in the first hole. I am using these kind of curved needles, as you can see. They're not necessarily useful for the saddle stitch portion here where I'm doing the seam, but they're going to be very helpful in sewing this wrap to the grab handle later, and you'll see that in a separate clip. I should back up and say I've got 2 needles, one on each end of the thread, and we're going to be doing this kind of like that. It'll make sense in a second. I'm gonna run this needle in my left hand here back and behind the piece, and then over this clamp, let that drop down, running the needle in my right hand, run back and behind the piece and letting that rest on the workbench. And just for visual, you can see I've got it wrapped around that way, and it creates this finished edge on the very final hole. So what we're going to do is go back into the first hole which we started with here to do the saddle stitch. So all right, when you're doing this, because the stitch is braided, you're going to want to put some tension on any thread that's already in that hole, and make sure you're not puncturing the thread, because if it's braided, you're going to send the needle through a portion of thread that you're going to want to pull tight or something later on, and it won't move because the needle's gone through it. So make sure you don't puncture your own thread. So we're going to run that through there, drop it down, and then pick up our other needle, run it through to the other side. Now again, tension on all the thread running through the hole, and run this needle through. And any thread that you're going to be pulling on, I like to run back and forth while the needle is still in the hole to make sure I haven't picked it up. If I have, I can just back the needle out. Once you pull the needle all the way through, like so, it gets really difficult to push the needle back the other way. You have to de-thread the needle, pull the thread through, and then re-thread the needle. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So you're going to pull both sides through here, and now give it a little tension. We've just finished this edge here with some thread, sort of 2 loops, top and bottom. Now we can go ahead and actually stitch the rest of this all the way across. What we're going to do is always start the stitch with the left hand and then finish with the right. But before we start the stitch with the left hand, we're going to prime our hole with our awl just to open it up on the right side. So get in here, run the awl through, just loosen up that hole so you don't have to fight the leather with your needle. So come in through here, run the needle through, and then pull it out this side until you've got a little bit of thread remaining, a nice little loop here. And then what you're going to want to do is essentially drop that thread as you pull it through forward, closer to you. Again, I'm standing, I guess obviously right where I am in the camera. You're going to then pull both sides of the thread taut, take your other side of the loose needle, run it through again. Now before we pull the needle through the hole, we're just going to check to make sure we haven't picked up the existing thread in the hole on that needle. We haven't. Run it through. And then we pull both sides of our thread tight. And now we've got a saddle stitch in that hole there. And I will bring you down a little closer. There you go. So this was that first stitch we did that just finished off the edge, and this is really the first quote-unquote saddle stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and go all the way across top and bottom here. You don't need to see me sewing. If you want to see a sewing video, go ahead and look one up. I'm not an expert. I'm not qualified to teach the saddle stitch, but that is the gist of it. And then I will come back with you, obviously, once we are ready to attach the wrap to the actual grab handle. I filmed that on the front passenger grab handle, simply because it's really easy to pull the front A-pillars out of the truck and work on it on the bench. I plan to install these in the truck, working in the truck. It's not going to be as easily filmed, easily seen, so I decided to film the passenger grab handle up front. So that's where we'll pick up next.
Okay, so as you can see, I've got the passenger front A-pillar pulled off on the bench, and we're starting to do this X pattern on the stitch. I will say, to get started, which I forgot to film here, you're just going to run the thread through both the top holes along that top edge, through, I guess, the back side of the leather, even up the thread, and then begin your crisscross pattern. As you're about to see here, you're going to be putting the needle through the same hole that the previous piece of thread came out of. When you do that, before you pull the needle through all the way like I do here, you need to check to make sure you haven't skewered your thread like I just did. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that off camera, pull the needle off, pull the thread back out, and put your needles back on. I've done two sort of cross patterns here, 2x stitches if you will. You may, as you go, find that your holes are not perfectly lined up. You might need to finesse the tension on one or both of the threads as you pull them tight, just to continue keeping your holes lined up as you continue along here. Now you see me remembering to check to make sure I haven't skewered the thread. Remember, this is braided thread with the needle before pulling it through. Now I've got 3 stitches there. I've removed the tape. I'm kind of confident at this point that I won't need the adhesive spray. Just going to be using the tension from the thread to keep this grab handle in place. And again, you see me pulling the thread back and forth with the needle in the hole, making sure that I'm not hooked on the thread with that needle there. As you continue to kind of work your way through or work your way down the grab handle, just make sure to realign your workpiece if it kind of rotates or twists on you. But again, you're just going to be continuing on that X pattern, continuing to pull the thread tight. Can't really pull it too tight. Do keep in mind though that you're not going to be brushing or crunching the 2 edges of the leather and the seam together and creating a bulge. If you do see a bit of a bulge underneath the X's, you'll need to trim some of that leather back like I'm doing here. I noticed it was going to be a little bit too sort of long in the middle. Cut off just the smallest sliver. So as I continue on, I won't have the leather sort of contacting itself and then creating a bit of a speed bump underneath the seam line here. And it'll make for a much cleaner finish. It takes a little bit of time, but just, be patient and trust the process, and it'll turn out really, really nice when you're done. I wasn't quite sure, how this would all turn out when I started. Definitely had to trust the process moment, and really, really glad I just stuck with it and took my time, because it came out very, very nice in the end, as you're about to see. So you'll see I've sped things up here a little bit, just continuing on down here with my X pattern. Gonna work my way towards the last few stitches here, trying to keep my tension even, my spacing about the same. As you do go, make sure you're continuing to fold over the thread, say the left side every time first and the right side over top, otherwise it'll look a little bit weird when you put it in your car and you look at it. So now I'm finishing up with the last holes. We're putting the needle, the curved needle, as you see there. It's quite helpful getting that second side of the leather picked up. We've got our thread through the last holes. It took a little bit of work to do, but found the holes. Now we're going to go ahead and zoom in here to finish this off. I'm going to bring the thread behind the leather on both sides, just going back into those same holes again, and then it is a little bit tough at this point because there's so many different pieces of thread going into the same hole, but you keep working it and you'll get it there. So I'm going to be pulling this thread through the hole. You can see the curved needle there really is quite helpful in terms of getting through the leather without having to worry about smacking into the A-pillar handle behind it. So at this point we're done. We just got to tie off the thread. I just did a couple of simple twists. And now remember, this is polyester thread, so we can just cut it short. My leads are about 1/2 inch, maybe just a smidge shy of that. I'm going to hit this with a torch. Be real careful not to actually hit the leather. Do a couple of quick blasts with the torch, shorten up those ends, and then tuck them neatly out of the way with a pair of needle nose pliers. And you're basically done at this point. You've got maybe really nothing else to do. Just kind of stand back and look at it, make sure it's all lined up and straight, and then put them all back in the truck. All right, guys, we last left off with me sewing that grab handle onto the grab handle wrap onto the grab handle. It's now installed in the truck. Here is the driver's side. Give you a nice close-up of the stitching there. It's a little bit dark in here, but there it is. This one looks really nice. It is secure. I didn't have to use any tape. It's just held together with the tension from the, I guess, precise nature of the fit and the thread there pulling it together. Show you the back real quick. This one I think you can see a little better. You don't have the shadow of the windshield on it. These guys turned out really, really nice. I couldn't be happier with this look. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me put all these together and get something out of it. All right, as I was saying, I hope you enjoyed watching me put all of this work together and get these grab handles cut out and attached. If you enjoyed the video, please do like it. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel. And as always, stay tuned for more.